Hello and welcome to China Now with me, Makiza Latifa. I'm happy to bring this week's edition of the show your way. Let's begin with China Currents. Stories coming up include a US industry leader refusing to believe China's viral robot march video, China unveiling its scientific plan for the next 5 years, including an ambitious search for a second Earth Plus. And amid global tensions, President Donald Trump has taken the initiative to call President Xi Jinping. We'll tell you more shortly. And in Hong Kong, a deadly high-rise fire has claimed 146 lives, prompting Beijing to order a nationwide inspection of similar buildings for fire hazards. Let's get started.
Welcome to China Currents. In this episode, over the past week, Xinjiang has been swept by a football frenzy. A US leading expert questioned the authenticity of a video of China's robot march. China unveils its plan for scientific exploration for the next 5 years, including the search for a second Earth. Amid global tensions, Trump takes initiative to call Xi Jinping. And a deadly fire in Hong Kong kills 156, prompting Beijing to order a nationwide inspection of high-rise fire hazards. Now let's start today's China Currents. For the past 2 weeks, China's Xinjiang region has been buzzing because of one football tournament. The Atushi Cup, known as the World Cup of Xinjiang, kicked off on November 15th, bringing together 16 teams from across the region to compete for a total prize of 2.1 million yuan across 32 intense matches. The popularity of the football matches is captured in one single detail. Even people on IV drips still showed up. In just 2 weeks, more than 20,000 people watched the game in person. Stream views exceeded 15 million, and related videos across the internet amassed an astonishing 800 million views. On Chinese social media alone, fans created over 1,000 short videos in a single day. The final on November 27th pushed excitement to its peak. When the Hotan Universe Carpet team won the championship with a 2-1 victory, cheers erupted across Xinjiang, in apartment buildings, bars, and even at wedding banquets. The quality of the play is truly top tier. Besides amateur athletes, current Chinese Super League and China League One players also joined. Kashgar's team was coached and led by CSL players Ifer Ding and Abdul Hamiti. Even so, they failed to reach the top 4, a sign of how competitive the Atushi Cup really is. In fact, the tournament's popularity in Xinjiang can be attributed to the region's deep-rooted football culture. One popular video showed the vlogger asking primary school students in Xinjiang about their dreams. A boy immediately answered, to become a great football player and lead China to the World Cup. In an effort to encourage and cultivate football talent, China has ramped up policy support for Xinjiang. By 2024, Xinjiang had 4,595 football fields, among the highest per capita in the country. It also has 959 football-focused schools, accounting for more than 20% of all primary and secondary schools in the region. Next, if your perception of Xinjiang has been completely upended, we have a leading American expert in robotics who is equally astonished by China's new developments. On November 14th, Chinese robotics firm UB Tech released footage showing hundreds of Walker S2 humanoid robots standing in formation inside a warehouse. They turned in their heads in sync, waved their arms, and marched into shipping containers, a visually striking scene that looked straight out of iRobot. Brett Adcock, founder and CEO of US robotics company Figure, immediately suggested the video was CGI. In response, UB Tech released raw first-person view drone footage with live audio, inviting skeptics to examine it for themselves. Yet Adcock remains unconvinced. For Chinese viewers who have seen robots box, play football, dance, and even work in hotels, his skepticism comes across as arrogance. After all, the only remarkable thing in the video is the scale, and for China the level of manufacturing is merely a piece of cake. UBTech's chief brand officer Tan Ming believes the doubt stems from a lack of understanding of China's manufacturing capabilities and the collaborative strength of its supply chains. Yao Qiyuan, founder of Shenzhen's Engine AI, says open source development is a key force driving China's rapid robotic evolution. Thanks to open source developments, his company can move from design to prototype in just 6 months. Meanwhile, in Shenzhen's Nanshan district, known as Robot Valley, hundreds of robotics companies and suppliers sit packed together. As locals say, upstairs and downstairs are upstream and downstream. The industrial park is a supply chain. Robots spark the imagination, but China's scientific ambitions extend far beyond Earth. China's newly released 5-year science plan targets humanity's biggest question: how did the universe form, and where did life come from? Are we alone? China's 15th 5-year space science roadmap outlines 4 satellite programs designed to probe the deepest cosmic mysteries. The first is the Hongmeng Project, a low-frequency radio telescope array of 10 satellites to be sent to the far side of the Moon, a place shielded from Earth and solar noise. It will probe the cosmic dark ages, the period between the Big Bang and the birth of the first stars. The second is Quafu 2, aimed at the Sun. It will become the world's first satellite to orbit above the Sun's poles, helping scientists to predict solar storms earlier and understand the Sun-Earth relationship. The third is the second Earth exoplanet survey satellite, designed to find Earth-sized planets in habitable zones, potential future homes for humanity. The fourth is EXTP, a space observatory outside Earth's atmosphere tasked with studying extreme cosmic environments, the edges of black hole events horizons, and magnetic fields trillions of times stronger than Earth's. It will test Einstein's theories in ways impossible on Earth. Our next story brings us back to Earth, to the latest interaction between China and the United States. On the evening of November 24th, Chinese President Xi Jinping and US President Donald Trump had an hour-long phone call that had not been announced to the public beforehand. Notably, the call came after weeks of escalating China-Japan tension over Taiwan and just after Trump's aides met Ukrainian officials in Geneva to push forward a peace plan, one that Russia has rejected. Both sides confirmed that President Trump accepted Xi Jinping's invitation to visit Beijing in April. They also discussed trade, Taiwan, and Ukraine. China, meanwhile, is said to have bought at least 10 cargoes of US soybeans worth about $300 million. And just hours after Xi-Trump conversation, Japanese media reported that PM Sanae Takaichi also held a 20-minute call with Trump, though she declined to disclose the content. According to Fudan University professor Shen Yi, although China's foreign ministry confirmed that the call was initiated by the US, China sought to downplay that fact in an effort to suggest an equal relationship status or a G2 relationship. He also noted that when discussing Taiwan, the US dropped its long-held ambiguity after Xi emphasized that Taiwan's return to China is an integral part of the post-war international order. Then US responded, the US understands how important Taiwan question is to China. This may hint a shift in Washington's stance. Next, we turn to the news that broke the hearts of Chinese people. Last week, Hong Kong suffered its deadliest fire in decades. On Wednesday afternoon, a blaze engulfed Wong Fuk Court, a 31-story residential complex. 7 of the 8 towers were affected. Firefighters fought the blaze for over 40 hours before bringing it under control. As of 4 p.m. on December 2nd, 156 people had died and around 30 others remained missing. Preliminary investigations indicate a fire began in external protective netting used for renovation work. The flames may have been fueled by improper materials, including bamboo scaffolding, exterior protective nets, and highly flammable foam boards temporarily covering parts of the building. Fire alarm systems in all 8 towers are also believed to have malfunctioned, delaying evacuation and worsening the tragedy. Hong Kong's anti-corruption agency has launched a special task force to investigate possible bribery in the renovation project, and 21 suspects have been arrested. Beijing issued a national directive on Saturday, launching a sweeping inspection campaign targeting fire hazards in high-rise buildings. And that's all for today. See you next time.
Up next is our top picks segment. In this episode, we take a closer look at the real lessons of China-US rare earth competition. We'll explore how the strategic rivalry is shaping global supply chains, the economic and technological implications for both countries, and what lessons can be drawn from industries and policymakers around the world. And we'll also address a key question that keeps coming up. Why is America so dependent on Chinese rare earths? This remains a puzzling question even in China. So let's keep watching to see what's happening.
So why is America so heavily reliant on the Chinese rare earths? The question remains puzzling even in China. Americans have debated the rare earth shortage for more than 15 years, but it's still shocking to see almost no progress made across half a generation. To borrow Mr. Trump's phrasing, China couldn't believe its own luck. The earliest warning came in 2010 when China leveraged rare earth exports during a territorial dispute with Japan. American media erupted with coverage, highlighting a glaring strategic weakness. While the US was capable of mining rare earths, China controlled nearly 90% of the global processing capacity. Without China's processing plants, the EV production lines, precision guidance systems, and even the advanced fighter jets would be paralyzed overnight. The danger was so clear that the House of Cards, the hit Netflix drama show, actually dramatized a scenario which China threatens a rare earth export ban. But despite this cultural wake-up call, the Moly Corp, the last US company that was capable of processing rare earths, collapsed in 2015 after losing the competition against Chinese firms. If Washington failed to observe the lesson back in the 2010s, the period from which 2018 to 2020 trade war has delivered such an unmistakable warning, Beijing had explicitly signaled that the rare earth exports could be cut off. From any rational perspective, this was a moment for decisive action. But Washington again failed. There were indeed brief flashes of reversal. People like James Litinsky, the CEO of MP Materials, has made repeated television appearances after 2019 and proclaiming that America would break China's rare earth monopoly. But these aspiring speeches masked an unspoken truth. More than half of the US ore mined still had to be shipped to China for refining, while the rest of it went to Australia to be processed. So that America's supposed rare earth sovereignty was built entirely on the foreign processing infrastructure. Ultimately, the rhetoric evaporated as China and America reached a trade deal in early 2020, removing this critical nature of rare earth shortage. As a consequence, imports of rare earth continued, and the US domestic processing capacity stagnated again. During President Biden's 4 years in office, despite his promise to build back better, there was nearly zero investment in the STEM talent or the industrial R&D that is necessary to revive the domestic processing. There was no multi-agency coordination, and the project choking regulations remained untouched. The total government support amounted to 300 million USD, which is a trivial sum in industrial policy terms. And this stands in a sharp contrast to the semiconductor sector. The CHIPS Act, passed in 2022, authorized around $52.7 billion in subsidies and tax credits for the chip manufacturing. By year 2024, over $32 billion in grants and $29 billion in loans had already been allocated. That is 200 more times than the investment in the rare earths. From an industrial strategy perspective, this imbalance is truly irrational. While the chips themselves contain almost no rare earth materials, the machinery that used to produce them does, like fabrication robots, servo motors, lithography chambers, all depend heavily on the neodymium magnets and other specialized rare earth coatings. America's massive investment in the fabs only created the neo dependency by expanding its exposure to minerals which it does not control. So this strategic incoherence becomes even clearer through the lens of the AI race. AI models require vast data centers filled with GPUs, and cooling them requires thousands of high RPM fans that is again built with rare earth magnets. And the US military's vision of this AI-enhanced warfare, from satellite systems to radar arrays, rests heavily on the rare earth components. If China just stops exporting rare earths, the US will lose not only the EV motors, but also the technology backbone of its AI-driven military systems. So this flawed industrial planning explains why China had decisively played the rare earth card. America is just too dependent, too vulnerable. Ultimately, it had little choice but to compromise. And this raises the deeper question, why did the US walk willingly into such a self-made trap? The answer lies in its deep-rooted addiction to the neoliberal economics. For the last 4 decades, neoliberalism has taught American policymakers and corporate executives the same doctrine. Specialize where margins are highest, outsource the low-margin messiness of production, and let the global markets optimize the rest. That doctrine functions well in the consumer technology, but fails catastrophically when the strategic bottlenecks determine national security. So the semiconductors sit at this glamorous, high-value end of the supply chain and fits perfectly into this neoliberal worldview because the chips are high growth, high margin, innovation-driven, and easy to champion politically. The fabs create headline jobs, the GPU production drives the stock markets, and the CEOs of the chip industry becoming the demigods. Buying the stocks of these starship companies has become a new gospel of prosperity. And investing in the chips produces this instant political mileage. The middle class has also benefited because they share on the market rally, while the rich play the bets on when will the bubble burst. Even the lower class can get jobs in constructing these massive data centers. On the other hand, the rare earth processing is dirty, is low margin, and is heavily regulated. It offers no Wall Street narrative, no Silicon Valley stardust, and no AI hype. So the result was a structural bias. Subsidize the apex of the tech pyramid, ignore the foundation. America has since been trapped in its own propaganda loop that chips are everything, chips are the future, that chips define the power. That loop has incentivized policymakers to the underlying fragility. Without the rare earths, the entire chip ecosystem basically collapses. The neoliberal ideology has become so blended that American leaders thought China will not utilize its chokehold on rare earths because supposedly they think China is compelled to play by the rules of this global capitalism. But why would China do that if America broke the rules first by seeking to isolate China from global chip supply chains? China has in fact been planning to play a different game from the very beginning. Since the 1980s, as China opens to the world, it began to hone its strategic masterstroke. The Chinese leader back then, Deng Xiaoping, has famously said that the Middle East has oil, but China has rare earths. That is an early recognition that the rare earths are not mere commodities. They are the strategic choke points that can be leveraged, just like how OPEC has engineered the oil prices back in 1973. This foresight shaped the national industrial planning. The rare earths were integrated into these long-term economic and military strategies. Learning from America's chip ban, China has executed the coordinated industrial policy. Instead of just fragmenting responsibility across private companies and competing agencies, China has centralized the decision-making process. The state banks has financed the infrastructure in mining regions. The provincial governments has coordinated transport networks, linking the mines to the processing plants. And the smaller companies actually were consolidated into larger and more efficient state-backed conglomerates that is capable of achieving scale. So China has essentially vertically integrated the entire supply chain from extraction to separation to manufacturing, ensuring that value accumulation happened domestically. By year 2025, China's rare earth supply chain is internally transparent to the Chinese government, with every segment of the supply chain documented and a comprehensive monitoring system put in place. In the times of national emergency, no industrial actor can simply act on their own because every trace of the refined rare earth can be tracked with harsh punishment for any company that violates the export control. So crucially, China has invested heavily in the STEM talent and technical expertise. The Chinese universities have trained more than 120,000 chemical engineers and material scientists each year, and they mastered the separation chemistry and the magnet design, with over 2,000 of them specialized in the rare earth production alone. The Chinese state labs also worked alongside industry on the process optimization and environmental control. An entire ecosystem of talent emerged: scientists, technicians, engineers. They're all capable of maintaining, expanding, and modernizing the rare earth processing capacity. Such STEM workforce would take America decades to match, even as China's population ages. This is a structural asymmetry at the heart of the rare earth crisis. China planned, invested, coordinated, and trained its way into a position of dominance. America, on the other hand, outsourced, deregulated, and financialized its way into dependence. And now in this age of AI, that dependence has become a strategic liability that even $1 trillion investment in the chips cannot compensate for. This is Curtis, and thanks for watching. Till next time.
And that's all for our top pick segment. Up next is the Thinkers Forum, where our scholars and experts share their insights on today's most important issues. For the first part of this segment, we're joined by Professor Shan Yi, Professor of International Relations at Fudan University. Stay with us for this very informative interview.
I think just about a week ago, the Trump administration proposed a 28-point peace plan, in which it included some of the most contentious points between Russia and Zelensky, which is, for example, that the Ukraine was going to concede even more land in the east to Russia and constitutionally promise that it was never to join NATO. And so that was a 28-point plan about a week ago. And it was reported today that that 28 plan has been watered down to 19 points, leaving out the exact points of contention. So as what we have right now on hand, is Trump making any progress in keeping peace or stopping the war in Ukraine?
The real challenge comes from the Russian side. The question is, nowadays, Russia take advantages on the battlefield. The troops keep moving. The bear is walking forward, maybe slowly, but he is moving forward. He will say that, I want this, I want that. If you give me, I will say thank you. If you don't give me, I will put it by myself. I will take it by myself. It's only a matter of the times. And also, according to the analysis of those real, so-called those real hawkish guys inside Russia, frankly speaking, just kind of challenge to our common sense. Putin is not the hawkish representatives of Russian nationalism groups inside Russia. Putin refers to those moderate peoples. He is very dove, according to, if he comparing Putin's ideas of those real hawkish nationalisms.
Yeah, that's what we heard also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe people would believe Russia should not stop moving unless Russia take Odessa back. Odessa maybe as the more idealized target to make a final stop of these special military operations. Of course, on the northern part, maybe Kharkov, or at least 50% of Kharkov is better if you make a comprehensive calculations on those costs and what you got from these military operations. That will be more persuasive to persuade these domestic hawkish nationalism groups to agree, yes, okay, we already got what we should get and we need a rest. And then we will accept a ceasefire plan. To the United States, actually, Trump need to, maybe if we just consider that United States and Russia as nuclear powers, we just say that how to launch ceasefires in such kind of situations. United States' only successful experience comes from the Vietnam War, when Nixon launched his ceasefire plans. Before he delivered that ceasefire plan, he upgraded rather than de-escalations of the conflict. He escalated the conflict rather than de-escalate the conflict. He leveled up the bomber to the northern part, and then they put huge pressure forces on the northern part of the Vietnam, and then make Vietnam agree to dialogue him on Paris to launch this final ceasefire. Nowadays, in the Ukraine battlefield, if United States can not raise that kind of pressures, and also while at the same time deliver this ceasefire plan, it just sounds like from Russia's side say that United States say, okay, we want to surrender. And then to Russia guys say, okay, if you want to surrender, please withdraw from my territories. I will occupy all those territory I deserved. And when I got those territory I deserved, since you asking for surrender, I will take my territory first. When I'm satisfied, I will stop, and then we can dialogue how to launch this final ceasefire and so on. So it will be tough jobs, even though Ukraine, European Union say, okay, yes to United States, to which extent Russia will accept this plan. And also, you know that till now, they don't got agreement how, I mean, the patterns, which means should they make the ceasefire first and then begin to negotiation, or they just continue negotiation and continue while at the same time continue the fight to going on. It will be a little bit easy to persuade Ukraine and the European Union to accept a kind of draft. But the point is how to deliver it and then make it into a real ceasefire and a negotiation blueprint and the roadmap that need cooperation and agreement from Russian side. Till now, I did not see any positive or constructive signals, and I don't know how they can do it.
And again, I'm just comparing notes as you were speaking just now, is that in a Chinese release, at least, it said the two leaders, I'm talking about the call between Xi and Trump. It said the Chinese official release said both leaders did talk about the crisis in Ukraine. It didn't go any much further, other than stating Chinese official rhetoric that, we hope to work towards peace. Do you think that China has any role to play in this, or does Trump expect China to play a role in this?
It's not the first time that Trump dialogue with Xi Jinping and mentioned the Ukraine issues, but maybe it's the first time Xi Jinping make a formal feedback and it was written and released on China's side statement. So it's quite symbolic issues. It make people have some limited space to imagine, and means that maybe China feedback more constructive, or at least constructive emotional signals, which will provide some emotional values to Trump, make Trump to feel better, just like that. Okay, he's my best friend. I talk something tough, my tough plans, my tough days with Russia. He at least delivers some emotional comfort to say that, hey, you guys, you need to feel better, and wish after I saying that to make you feel better. The first, and the second, those statement is quite cautious. It's quite cautious. It sends a quite clear signal. It means that China don't have any intention to make boycott of your plan. We will not bring you troubles. We will not try to destroy this peace plan. We wish the peace to come, and I would prefer, I would be very happy to find out that you guys can provide this constructive plan to deliver the ceasefire and the peace to terminate this conflict. The second. And the third part, if you read the whole sentence, China take a very cautious and objective attitude. He said that we need to deliver a kind of permanent ceasefire, not kind of temporary ceasefire. China, and believe that China remind the United States such kind of ceasefire need to be relatively objective, considering each other's core interest, take a more realistic attitude to practically solve these issues rather than just pressure on one side or to the other.
But there is another quote from the official statement on Chinese media, is that to resolve this crisis from its root, to root out the fundamentals of the crisis. Is that potentially referring to the eastward expansion of NATO?
Yeah, and just like you will find, it's a very consistent logic of China to deal such kind of things. For example, if you go back to six-party talks on Korea Peninsula, how to deal with DPRK's nuclear issues, China side will always say that DPRK's reasonable security concern must be considered if you really want to solve these nuclear issues, because if you cannot provide in this reasonable security to DPRK, then DPRK must find something to help to solve his own security concern. So that's a very traditional and a consistent continuity and a consistent China's logic to solve such kind of security issues in the world, no matter to Russia or to DPRK or to any other things. If you go to the Middle East, China will take the same attitude how to solve this Palestine crisis. You should not simply blame one side. You need to take a quite objective attitude to analyze the historical reasons and the deep root of the conflict, and then try to solve this root objectively with with a high quality solution which take considerations of each other's national deep interest and so on. So I think that's China's traditional logic. We take a very objective and a scientific attitude to seek the real peace rather than to seek our interest in the name of seeking peace. So that's totally different attitude on these things.
Next on the Thinkers Forum, we bring you an interview with Wu Qina, a Chinese scholar from Taiwan, who will share his insights on the history of Ryukyu.
I think before I start, let me add some information about myself. My name is Wu Qina, with the family name first. The pronunciation is exactly the same as how Ryukyu people refer to themselves as Wu Qina. Whenever Ryukyu people say my name, they are very friendly toward me. This coincidence was one of the starting points of my interest in Ryukyu. My academic interest in Ryukyu comes from my research on the political history of Asian ethnic groups, where there are common values in how Asian perceive state relations, intergroup relations. Chinese civilization is an original civilization of East Asia, while Korean, Japanese, and Ryukyu civilizations are secondary or peripheral civilizations. The Ryukyu Islands are located in the Western Pacific, southeast of China, and southwest of Japan. Culturally, the Ryukyu Islands have kinship with Japan, but this connection existed before the formation of ancient states. During the archaeological period, after the Common Era, Japan, influenced by the Chinese civilization, began to form a state, whereas at the same time, the Ryukyu Islands were in tribal chiefdom state. In the 13th century, several Asian states emerged in Ryukyu, and by the 14th century, all had established tributary relations with Ming Dynasty China. Let's talk about the tributary system. In the 14th century, the Ming Dynasty of China established a tributary system centered on China with surrounding land and maritime countries. With the exception of Japan, this system was fundamentally different from European feudal tributary system and European suzerain colony model during the period of colonial expansion. The tributary system centered on China during the Ming and Qing dynasties, that's before 14th century to the late 19th century, appeared unequal on the surface, but was actually equal in content. Today's United Nations system appears to grant full sovereignty to all states, but it is actually unequal. With the Ming and Qing tributary system, tributary countries offers native products to China, but receives gifts worth several to dozens of times more in return. In practice, China engaged in unequal trade with tributary states to maintain geopolitical stability, with the tributary state being the beneficiaries. Politically, tributary state respected China's prestige, while China did not interfere in their internal affairs. In the case of Ryukyu, Japan rose at the end of 13th century, challenging China's central position in East Asia and threatening China's maritime traffic and trade security. For 14th century China, it was necessary to ensure maritime security and prevent threats from Japan. Therefore, the Ming Dynasty offered favorable trade conditions to Ryukyu, provided the most advanced ship of the time, and even directly sent shipbuilding technology and complete technical personnel to Ryukyu. Furthermore, the Ming Dynasty granted Ryukyu at the trade benefit of the Western Pacific. From the Korean Peninsula to the Strait of Malacca, making Ryukyu the Ming Dynasty trade agent without requiring profit sharing, only responsible for reporting the movement of Japanese pirates. With the support of Ming navigation technology, the Ryukyu Islands were able to unify internally and become the trade center in the Western Pacific, becoming the wealthiest country in the region. From the 14th century until 1879, Ryukyu overall benefited from its relationship with Ming and Qing China. This relationship aroused Japan's jealousy. In 1609, the Satsuma domain attacked and controlled Ryukyu, but did not inform China. Instead, they keeping Ryukyu in a state as a Chinese tributary. Japan demanded that Ryukyu hand over half of the gifts received from China and provide about 1/3 of its agriculture and handicraft products. When envoys from the Ming and later Qing arrived in Ryukyu, Japan required Ryukyu to pretend to be politically and economically independent, not under Japanese control. Japan did this to continue obtaining economic benefits from China. In the 19th century, the Ryukyu Kingdom signed trade treaties with the United States, France, and Netherlands, and other countries with China's endorsement, that establishing Ryukyu's status under the modern international law. But Japan selected parts of Western European modern sovereignty state theory that were advantageous to itself. In 1874, it began to claim sovereignty over the Ryukyu Islands and used this as a pretext to attack tribes on Taiwan, a Chinese island province. In 1879, Japan attacked the capital of the Ryukyu Kingdom, captured the Ryukyu king, annexed the Ryukyu, and turned this island into a prefecture of Japan, renaming it Okinawa. This is the Japanese pronunciation of Uchina. From a cultural perspective, the Ryukyu people are undoubtedly the indigenous inhabitants of Ryukyu Islands and the citizens of Ryukyu Kingdom. Ryukyu culture shares the kinship with the culture of Japanese archipelago, but long before the formation of ancient Japanese state and ancient Ryukyu Kingdom, they both had already developed independently. The Ryukyuan language has grammatical similarities with Japanese, but there are significant differences in vocabulary and phonology, that making it unquestionably an independent language separate from Japanese. Ryukyu not only had the traditional political independence, but its value system and cultural ecology were also vastly different from Japan. The early modern Ryukyu Kingdom was formed through interaction with early modern China, Korea, Malacca, Japan, and other countries. Its unique political traditions, political identity, independent international market, historical experiences, and collective memory were all distinct from Japan. Japan annexed Ryukyu in 1879 without the consent of Ryukyuan people. On the contrary, there are many examples of Ryukyuan intellectuals committing suicide to protest Japanese aggression. Japanese rule over Ryukyu was not an equal governance, but treat Ryukyuans as second-class citizens, discriminated against them, attempt to eradicate their language and culture, and sacrifice Ryukyuan lives in life or death situation. After 1949, American rule over Ryukyu was similarly discriminatory. When administrative authority over Ryukyu was handed back to Japan, the Japanese government continued the policy that demanded the sort of eradicate Ryukyu culture. Ryukyu-born people faced discrimination within Japanese society and even within the Ryukyu Islands themselves. Ryukyuan language is now on the brink of extinction. Recognizing the Ryukyuan people as the indigenous people and protecting their rights is not only legitimate, but necessary. I believe that the current situation in Ryukyu Islands shows that the world order established after the World War II has not been fairly upheld. The provocative remarks the Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi are a tantamount to challenging the post-war world order, challenging the United Nations framework, challenging the international law, and challenging the treaties between Japan and China. The provocations by Japanese politicians against the sovereignty and neighboring countries, as well as against the post-war rule in Japan, should not possess the nuclear weapons that have caused panic in East Asian countries and also trample the international community's consensus on the issues of denuclearization. Japan's action misled Asian countries and even countries outside the region into thinking that violating international law and the international consensus resulting in the dispute between nations through force or interfering in other countries' internal affairs and the protest of national survival are acceptable approaches. As I previously mentioned, fundamentally, the dispute between China and Japan stemmed from the fact that the post-World War II order was not upheld in Asia. Unlike Germany in Europe, some Japanese politicians and civilians are unwilling to accept the outcome of Japan's defeat, politically unwilling to acknowledge that Japan was defeated by the Chinese people. This resulted in Japan still having a sense of superiority when dealing with China and other Asian countries, and being unable to restrain its impulse to dominate Asian affairs again.
And that wraps up this week's edition of China Now. I am Makiza Latifa, and it's been a pleasure bringing you the latest stories, insights, and analysis from across China. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to bringing you more in-depth coverage next week. See you soon, and let China not be far away from you anymore.